Reynolds, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us, Minister.
Good to be here.
So it's been brewing, this rebellion, and as we understand it, the Treasury and the Prime Minister decided to U-turn on freezing the PIP disability payments. Is that fair to be confirmed?
I'm not going to comment on all the speculation in the newspapers, of which there has been a lot indeed. But I will say that we are determined to reform a system that is failing young people, 1 in 8 young people who are not in employment, education and training, nearly 3 million people out of work, and which is around the equivalent of the population of Greater Manchester. And it's also failing the taxpayer because it's unsustainable. By the end of the decade, we're due, if we don't do anything, if we don't reform the system, we'd let it go as it is, we'd be spending about £70 billion. So we've got to reform the system according to our values. Further detail will be set out in due course by the Work and Pensions Secretary. So I would urge people to wait to see the detail, but we will do it according to our values of equality and justice, and we will always protect the most vulnerable.
But Sam Coates was reporting last night that having the qualification to get these payments might well be changing, but that they were going to be freezed, now they will in fact increase as previously planned. Is that wrong to assume?
As I said, I'm not going to comment on speculation. We will set out further details this week. But as the Prime Minister has said, it's not sustainable, both morally and economically, to spend quite so much money on social security. We're an international outlier. We're the only major economy that hasn't recovered our employment rate since the pandemic. So something has gone seriously wrong under the Conservatives, and we are determined to ensure that the system stops failing everybody. It's failing the people involved, it's failing the taxpayer. We need to reform the system according to our values.
Andy Burnham said in an op-ed today that it risks some of these changes trapping too many people in poverty. Do you think it's unhelpful commentary to get that from your own side ahead of publishing these details?
Well, Andy Burnham has said that we are right to reform the welfare state and right to reform the system. I agree with him on that. At the moment, there are far too many people locked out of work. And if we're not careful, if we, over 1 million under 25s who are not in employment, education or training. We don't want to be in a situation where we waste the talents of that generation. So the state has got to work harder to get those people back into work and to provide the support they need. We've already launched a number of pilots across the country to bring together both the DWP and the support from NHS. So we need to make sure we have integrated support for those people to get into work.
I guess the broader point to Andy Burnham's comments and many of your colleagues in Parliament is whether the rebels are being unhelpful to you as a government more broadly, even if this is an issue they care about passionately. Is this a case early in the government when there are challenges afoot for all to see that they need to fall in line in the greater interests of the Labour government?
Well, look, we have a big majority. We are a government that secured a mandate for change. It is absolutely everyday business that we should have discussions with backbenchers, meetings between our MPs and ministers happen all day, every day. So this isn't something that is any different, but we're determined to strike the right balance here. We've got to reform a system that is failing everybody, and we've got to do that according to our values. As Liz Kendall has said, there is a Labour case for reform here because too many people are locked out of the labour market, and there is dignity in work, and we want people to get back into work if they can.
More meetings with regulators today, the heads of regulators.
Indeed.
What's the message to them? And if they don't deliver, much like the head of the CMA, will they be out the door?
Well, the message today is that we're launching an action plan to bear down on the costs of the administrative costs of regulation. There is too much duplication and there is not enough streamlining. So the Chancellor will be meeting those regulators to discuss how we can work together in partnership to bring down the costs of that regulatory burden, because it's not doing anybody any favours. It's not securing better outcomes. It's just slowing down the system, whether that's building homes, building major infrastructure projects, or even just a firm getting a licence to operate. These things are taking too long, and they don't take as long in other jurisdictions. So we need to unleash the potential of British business and make the UK the very best place to do business. Is
there a very clear, tangible example that our viewers will understand that you'd like to see abolished?
Sure. So there was a drone company in the UK that had applied to the Civil Aviation Authority for a licence to operate It took hundreds of pages in application, and they did that for over a year, and they're still waiting. In the United States, it took 2 weeks. So we need to harness the potential of our innovative companies, and we need to stop duplicating requirements, and we need to ensure that we streamline those requirements so that those businesses can get up off the ground, quite literally in this case, and start working, and so that we can kickstart the economic growth that our country so desperately needs.
Those changes, removing regulations, presumably will take a while to feed through. The tax changes being imposed on businesses will come through in April. Taxes going up, obviously, in terms of national insurance contribution and the like. Are you worried that growth will slow more in the short term before some of these other measures can take effect?
Well, the Chancellor has set out lots of different measures for reform. We've got a landmark pensions review, which is going to consolidate, and it's already having some impact.
Is the economy slowing in the short term, though?
Well, we've seen the figures last week, and obviously they're disappointing, but we think that the underlying strengths of the UK economy are very promising, but we're not going to be able to turn around a decade or more of stagnant growth in 8 months, but we're laying the foundations to kickstart economic growth, and that's our number one mission in government, including in financial services, which is obviously my responsibility. We need to ensure that the regulators are on board with the government's mission and that they're streamlining regulation and getting rid of these various layers and lots of duplication that is currently in the system.
Emma Reynolds, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Good to see you.
Thank you.